are here today to talk about the H2 2021 analytics release with SuccessFactors. I am Carey Ross with Rizing, and I work in our managed services group, a senior consultant here on multiple modules, and happy to talk to you about this. And I am joined by my friend here.
Hi, Dan Gradows with the data science team, and I am super excited about anything reporting and analytics that's new. So let's talk about 2H of 2020.
Absolutely. Well, Dan, a couple of the big things that I'm seeing for this release, the one that I really think touches everybody, is something called new time zone resilient date fields. I think that's going to be, it's a little bit confusing kind of to discuss and describe, but really what they are is currently SAP is working to kind of migrate everybody over to a standard of UTC on the data centers, kind of that next gen delivery cloud for the servers. And with that, everybody will move to UTC. Well, in the past, many people have been on Eastern time for their server. Well, there's like a handful of fields in the system that currently either show they're visual by the logged in users time zone, or if that person doesn't have a time zone, it defaults to the server time zone. And so if the server time zone is Eastern, you know, like for me, I'm in Central time. If I'm viewing something in Eastern, probably not that big of a deal. But once it defaults, or once it goes to UTC and it defaults there, that could be kind of a change there in some of those fields on how that is visualized. So what they're doing now is they have a new thing called the tenant preferred time zone. And if you are looking at this, you can find your tenant preferred time zone in the admin center, company settings, and platform feature settings to find out what that is. And then once you do get migrated to the UTC, and you'll find out from SuccessFactors when that happens, it's not going to happen with this release. So just know that you will get communications when that happens for you. But then things will default still kind of like they do today, back to Eastern time or whatever time you maybe ask SAP to set that as. Just about a handful of fields, a few fields within each of the modules. And this will affect things within story reports, if you're using those yet. Table reports, canvas reports with detailed reporting, but not advanced reporting, and then also our tiles and dashboards. So that's probably that's a big thing, probably the biggest thing to affect really most of our users this time, Dan.
Yeah, it sounds to me like they're really trying to go after that global unity and starting with the time zones here, using UTC. I think that's a good step.
Absolutely, because it's always a question on what time zone am I looking at this in, and right. It's even been confusing for us at times when you're not sure which one the customer's on when we're working on reports. So that'll be good. There's also a lot of updates, kind of just small enhancements really within story reports this time, or people analytics. If you have not yet updated to people analytics, keep in mind that that's definitely something that you have the ability to do. There are some prerequisites that are involved in it, like implementing IAS, or Identity Authentication Service. Not necessarily an easy task there. But some of the new things you can do in story reports now, you can now report on notes within profile. So if you use the notes feature within people profile, you have the ability to report upon those. They'll follow your regular permission on the target people that you have access to view. Another thing that's cool, it's not necessarily in this release, but a lot of people have been asking, is you can also report on the % complete of the profile within a story report.
Yeah, that is a big one. That's been asked for the last about 12 years. That's a big
right. Absolutely. The other thing within profile is you can now report on custom sections that are created using custom MDF objects, where that's been a little bit of a lack before. So that'll be nice new stuff to be able to report within the profile area.
Yeah, clearly Stories is where we're headed. I know that there's some folks out there that are still using what they now call the legacy reporting tools, but people analytics is where they're headed. So the continued improvement of reporting across many different little subgenres in there is certainly encouraging.
Absolutely, yes. Some other areas of enhancements within those story reports, being able to do some audit reporting, audit trail records in performance on completed steps, like being able to see who the step owner was, what action they took. And audit reporting in performance has been something that has been missing so far. So I think that a lot of people will be excited about that.
Yeah, I would say that most of our reports now, I know, and especially in the Employee Central world, they're looking at audits. I know we still have some gaps in the data model for stories concerning audits, but the more and more we get that information, we can start looking at trends and changes over time, and that's really where a lot of the power comes from. SuccessFactors reporting. Absolutely.
Another new thing with story reports, in the report center, that actions button that gives you a long list of things you can do. With story reports, there's going to be a new option there to share the link. So there will be a shareable link that you can click on and then use that, let's say in a communication, or almost like a direct link to that story report. So rather than having to tell somebody where to go to find it, you share that link. It'll take them still through the login process, but it will go straight to the report center and follow their permissions for what they're able to visualize in that report.
Yeah, always being able to quickly get to a report. I know we like our report center. We like our labels and the use of labels. I know that it seems simple early on to not use labels in report center, and certainly run across that a few times with our clients, but anything that we can make that the availability of reports easier for the end user, the better off we're going to be in the long run.
Definitely. I love what you mentioned there about the labels, because at first I was a little bit like, I'm not sure about those, but they really do help.
Yeah, they do.
Depending on the instances I'm in and users that are using them.
Yeah, and let's face it, how many times do we share a link within an email for SharePoint or some sort of document repository, so we can go directly there? It's just ease of use.
Absolutely. Talk about ease of use. There's also going to be now inline translation within those story reports. So if you are in the widget or the page names, you can just enable a little toggle there to turn on the inline translation. To be able to, edit that, put that into multiple languages, which I think will be a lot easier to add those translations. The big thing there is, though, to remember, if you turn that on and add those in the future, editing that report can only be done in that source language, in the original source language that you started.
Yep, coupled with the UTC changes above, that global look and feel, kind of bringing the rest of the world into our universe with even easier techniques other than jumping on Google Translate and trying to figure it out that way. This is certainly going to be a lot easier. Right.
Also, a new query validation. I think that this sounds really neat. I haven't been able to look at it yet. But whenever you're in creating a query, if you choose to preview or finish that query in the query designer, it will now check for errors. It'd be great if they could make it fix those errors for you, but at least it's going to tell you what those missing columns are, maybe calculations, anything there, to point you in the direction to what you need to fix for that. A little bit less troubleshooting to look for it.
Right. I think this kind of comes on par with our Canvas reports and our validating the page. It certainly sounds like it's going to be even more helpful than that validating the page, because that often would just tell you that the field is wrong and then stops there. So it's kind of like a teaser, if you will, but this is going to go a little further. especially helpful on those reports that we're going to bring in from Report Center in that import content function with story reports. So anything that, I would say 9 times out of 10 when we bring those reports in, something is different based on the standard data model that they're using for development of those reports. It's gonna be very nice to be able to go in there and go, okay, here we go. This is what's missing, or this isn't what's working out.
Yeah, I definitely think it'll really work with that type of a situation with those standard reports, because they just keep putting more and more of those in there. And it's hard because that's what it is, a standard report. If somebody isn't using one of those standard fields, I think that this will easily identify that. One other area that we'll now be able to report on there is the new capabilities library. So you may have heard this in any of our other updates about the new capabilities library, but you will now be able to report on that. That's where there will be capabilities, skills, our competencies. And this is really nice, in my opinion, looking at that, being able to do some reporting on like the hierarchy of competencies in the different entities. And also making it really easy to identify what core competencies you have identified in your organization. Because previously it was kind of hard to see that data.
Yeah.
When you download a competency library, there's just so much in that document.
Yep, doing a good job of including more and more schemas and functions and stories for sure.
Right. One other thing with story reports is the learning data. So learning data is now available as of around June, July this year. It was right after the first half release. And if you enable story reports and you are already live on learning, then it'll automatically be there. If you go live with learning after you have enabled story reports, then there's a little bit of a sync that has to happen, a job within provisioning. But the good thing there, last release, if you remember, we had an increase of the number of fields we could have in the queries from 30 to 120, and learning's just being brought up to that too. It was still limited at 30 right now, but that'll be now 120 also. That's actually not coming until like January of 2022, but it will be, shortly after the release coming up.
Yeah, certainly pushing towards that unified data model. It's not quite unifying that data model, but the ability to link those analysis dimensions and everything like that, creating that holistic story is certainly going to be helpful.
Right. Yeah. And if you haven't yet, if you have Learning Management System, you can go out and listen to the review we've done on that also, because there are a lot more just things that are tying it into overall platform and kind of bringing that together that looks really good. We do have a few updates with Workforce Analytics also for this release. The first one is specific to Workforce Analytics on Hana. So if you're using the Hana version and not traditional of Workforce Analytics, you can now schedule an initial load. So rather than just, like a run it now when you've made changes to that setup, you can actually schedule that for the future. So maybe you have some changes you've made, throw that date out there for the weekend for it to do that initial load, because that one usually takes a little while. And then let that run. Just set it and forget about it. Come back in and get your notification that it had completed at the time that you set it.
Yeah, I think this couples nicely with the last release when they allowed the current working data model to persist while you're doing a build.
Yes.
So this couples nicely with that, because I can't tell you how many times I'm in the middle of the day and I'm like, well, I would love to run an initial load right now, but I also don't want to I want to make sure I don't goof anything up, even though we do have that additional feature. So I have to set an alarm to come back at 9 o'clock at night and run it while no one's looking. So it certainly is nice to be able to schedule that.
Right. Yeah. It'll save you a little bit of time there to play with the kids instead.
Right. Exactly.
There's also, that forecast option in Workforce Analytics within the Investigate tool. Previously, that's always been defaulted to on. So it was always on for the forecast option. This was a customer request to have that default to off. I think that a lot of people found that they were going in and having to click that off in order to proceed with that. So not a huge change unless that is something that you always like to have on. You'll have to remember to go in and click that off or click it back on, since it will now be defaulted to off.
Yeah, I think it's also good because SuccessFactors is listening to the community. So certainly those folks out there that will post stuff up there wondering if anything will be answered, here's proof positive that they are in fact listening and taking those things into consideration.
Right. Yeah, I've seen lots of them. It seems like with this release that that has that note on there that it came from the community. So that's wonderful. The last thing I have for workforce analytics is a new report template. You know, we see like the story report templates and other ones that come out, not quite as often the workforce analytics, but there's a new human capital report template out there for workforce analytics. This is to help honor the ISO standards for external stakeholders on this. One thing with it, it does state that it has multiple metric packs in there. And so it'll state that you have a prerequisite of having those metric packs. However, it does say there that even if you don't use them, it's okay. You can still load that report. You just simply have to, those pages will just be blank. But you could always edit the report and remove those pages and just use what you need out of it. So I'm glad to hear that it's not just like broken if you're not using all of those metric packs.
Sure. And really what's one of the most common things we get asked in the WFA world is, where do we begin? And certainly guiding them towards, you know, previously the standard measure pages, and here with the human capital report certainly adds a little bit of flavor to your initial load. And then we can encourage our clients to go on from there and develop their own fantastic reports.
Absolutely. With all of these, you know, there are some helpful links out there from SAP SuccessFactors to review, like with this human capital report. If you go out to the customer community and look at the What's New viewer for the second half release, you'll be able to see some additional documentation around these links that'll take you to maybe a video to show you how to use it, or for additional written documentation. Also a link out to even find, where do I find this human capital report, right? That's all going to be out in like help.sap.com. They have an area where you can download those templates to be able to then import into your system. Because right now that content store is only for story reports, not for the others at this point. Well, Dan, I think that's all that I have for you here today with the release. So hopefully these will be some great things for people to start using. And of course, if they have questions, let us know. We're here to help you, and we'll be happy to get you pointed in the right direction.
Yep, Carey, thanks for your time, and I look forward to the next release.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dan. We'll talk to you later.